Okay, we're in the fourth parak, Mishnah 13. Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Ha'osa mitzvah achat, kona lo paraklit echad. A person who does, right, ha'osa mitzvah achat, a person who does a single mitzvah, acquires for himself a single advocate. The ha'over avera achat, and a person who does a single avera, kona lo kategor echad. He pulls himself a single accuser. Tshuva umaisim tovim kitris bifnei haporaniot. And tshuva and good deeds are like a shield between you and retribution. So koneh, kinyan, is a word that really means a permanent acquisition. Something that you acquire for yourself. Something that's special that you acquire for yourself. Right? You don't generally think in terms of, you look at halacha and, kinyanim, right? You make a kinyan in land, you make a kinyan in, a wife. And I guess theoretically you make a kinyan in a hamburger, but it's not. Right? That's really not the essence. The idea is that the kinyan is a special, right, significant acquisition, right, that's done forever, that's done for your own sake. It says you do a mitzvah, you acquire a supporter, a voice, an advocate. Right? We talked before that eventually you're going to stand in judgment. Right? You're going to stand before the King of Kings and have to say, here's what I've done with my life. Din and cheshbon. Right? Din is the judgment over everything that you've done, and cheshbon is the judgment over everything that you should have done or could have been. So the question is, how do you want to stand there? Right? So you can ask a question. How is it possible? We're physical creatures. Right? Spiritual creatures wrapped in a physical body, living in a physical world. And the actions that we take are physical. Right? I reach into the refrigerator and grab a glass of milk, or I grab a sandwich, or I grab food, or I take money, I spend money, I grab an apple, I say words. These are all physical actions. So how is it possible? What's the lever that allows a physical body to act on a non-physical or supra-physical soul? Right? What's the lever? What's the connecting point? Right? We live in meat space, and yet we are essentially soul space people. So the question is, what's the connection? So that's the idea of the mitzvah system. Right? The mitzvah system, mitzvot, are morally charged actions. They're actions that serve as a lever between the physical and the spiritual. Not all physical actions affect the spiritual. Right? Choosing vanilla ice cream over chocolate, while it is clearly the logical choice, isn't necessarily a moral connection. Right? To sit in this chair versus that chair. There are actions in the world that are not spiritually driven. Again, you can turn them into spiritually driven by living in an elevated way, and I'm choosing this chair because it makes it kinder for the next person. There's ways you can affect it. But the underlying idea is that the mitzvah system is a bundle of physical actions that are morally and spiritually charged. And those actions serve as connecting points and levers between the physical and the spiritual. There's a concept that they correspond to the limbs and the sinews, and there's lots of metaphysical weight to it. But the underlying concept, the Ramchal says, that a mitzvah is an action that draws God closer to you, and a avera is an action that pushes God away from you. Right? Actions that make God's presence in the world more real versus actions that make God's presence less real. Right? And ultimately what you're doing is you're taking this spiritual thing. Right? It's got a physical analog. The physical is a model of what's going on with you spiritually. But in the end, your job is to act in these physical ways to perfect that part of you which is spiritual. Right? As you said, every part of your body, every physical action has a spiritual analog. And your job is to act on the analog, to act spiritually through physicality. So that's what this means, is that every time as you choose to do an action that brings God closer and makes God real and refines you spiritually, what you're creating is one more refinement in yourself. Right? You are bringing your spiritual nature closer to Hashem. That when it comes down time to And when it comes down time to stand before Hashem in judgment, and God says, who are you? What have you made of yourself? Right? That you will have that spiritual evidence. The defenders and the accusers, so to speak. I mean, it's not, the other team have this concept of, Satan, of spiritual forces that are independent of God. I mean, in our concept, Satan works for God. I mean, it's a spiritual aspect of, our connection to God. It's not a separate force that operates independent of the Kodesh Baruch Hu. That in the end of days, I will stand before the King of Kings, in judgment. And he'll look at me and he'll say, Howard, here's what you could have been. What were you? And what I'll be able to bring is those places where I've made choices that have purified my soul and drawn me closer to Him. I'll be able to bring those pieces of evidence. I'll bring those aspects of my soul, those defenders, and say, when faced with this challenge, here's how I acted. And those places where I've failed, where I've chosen to give in to physicality or destruction, to take actions that push God away from me, those will be indictments. Right? Those places will come and say, sweetheart, you could have been this, but you weren't. Right? And that you come with your successes and you come with your failures. And it's all about reality. It's what you've made yourself into. But God gives us a gift. He gives us a gift of tshuva. Tshuva is like a bulk eraser. Tshuva is the opportunity to take places where you've failed, places where you've made destructive choices, and to stop and to look at them and recognize them as destructive and regret the destructiveness and choose to go the opposite direction. And it says those things actually become shields for you. That those actions that were most destructive to your connection to God, it says, if you think in a relationship between you and a person, if someone has done something to you that was harmful, and then they realized just how harmful it was, and they really, really regretted what they had done, and they felt miserable about it, and they felt the pain, and they resolved not to do it again, and they apologized to you, and they came and corrected it. The fact that they had done such a thing would no longer be a block in your connection to them. In some ways, it would be a positive in your connection to them. It builds love in this person to have realized that, that they don't want to be that person. They don't want to be that person who distanced themselves from you. They don't want to be that person who harmed you. They want to be the person who healed you. And it reverses the direction. It says God gives us a gift that the mistakes and errors and destruction that we've caused with our lives, that we'll have the ability and the opportunity to correct and to bring back and to restore that connection between ourselves and our Creator. So that's our mission.